Hello everyone, I'm Jason and welcome back to General Aviation. So there have been several cases the past few months of people walking into a running aircraft propeller in general aviation, so I wanted to chat briefly about it. You hear about different incidents happening all the time, but when one happens locally, it seems a bit more real. So that was the case here. Just this last week at a local airport in Allentown, Pennsylvania, someone walked into a propeller. Now, fortunately, at this time, they are still alive as far as I know. And from what I can find, there have been at least 3 instances of people walking into moving propellers in the past 4 months. I don't remember hearing about this kind of frequency so much in the past, so I wanted to look into it a little bit. So let's start out briefly by reviewing these 3 cases, and then I'll share some thoughts. So Wednesday, November 9, that's just a few days ago. That was the local one here that I was referring to. A woman was struck by a propeller at the Lehigh Valley International Airport. That's Allentown, Pennsylvania, ABE. That was just outside the airplane's hangar. She was taken to a hospital with severe injuries, and from what I can find at this time, fortunately, she's still alive. Now, there isn't too much information available about this case yet, so I'm not sure the aircraft type or any of the circumstances which, were surrounding that incident. Then on Sunday, October 16, there was the one where the college student died after being struck by a propeller after a date. Apparently, he rented a Cessna 172 for a date. Someone flew with them somewhere. They returned. And then upon returning to Statesboro Bullitt County Airport, TBR, the woman exited the plane and walked towards the back, while he exited the plane and walked towards the front into the propeller where he died. Then back on Sunday, August 7, there was the 3rd case. This aircraft was a Diamond 40 at Samuels Field Airport, BRY in Kentucky. The story here is that after landing, the pilot agreed with the passengers that they would switch seats. They taxied back to the ramp. The pilot turned the aircraft around and pointed it back towards the taxiway. The pilot parked, opened the canopy with the engine still running. As the pilot attempted to pull the mixture to shut the airplane down, the front passenger immediately exited the aircraft onto the wing, stepped off, and walked into the propeller, and they unfortunately died. So, what can we learn here from all these cases? In all these scenarios, of course, the pilot would have killed the engine had they had to do it over again. But how many times do you hear of, people jumping in and out of the aircraft every day and it not be a problem? Well, maybe you don't hear about it, but I'm sure it happens all the time. I know for me, way back when I soloed, after flying with my instructor a little bit in the morning, we pulled up to the ramp, set the parking brake. The instructor opened the door, hopped out, said, "Give me 3 laps around the pattern." That was in the Cessna 150. I taxied off. The engine was running the whole time. That could be the case for a lot of you. So out of all these propeller accidents, though, we don't really hear that in a case like that, right? It was an instructor who walked into the propeller. So what's the difference between these different accidents? I guess it's a couple things. So first of all, it's aircraft familiarity. So in the 3 cases that we talked about, and probably many others, the person who walked to the propeller wasn't very familiar with general aviation aircraft, or at least it seems like that from the reports that we have. They were passengers going for a ride, pilots, or people who have spent considerable amount of time around aircraft are generally well aware of, where it's safe to walk. And another component here is the type of aircraft. The local accident here, I haven't found the aircraft type. The college student was a Cessna 172, and then the other one was a Diamond 40. The interesting thing about the Diamond aircraft is that when you exit the aircraft, you walk out onto the wing, and then you exit forward of the wing and not to the back of the wing like the majority of the low wing aircraft. Now that design is extremely risky to enter or exit the aircraft with the engine running. You literally only have a couple feet between where you step down and then where the propeller is spinning. And the sad part of that one is that in the report, the pilot had intended to shut the engine down. So that's what was going to happen. However, the passenger jumped out too quick. And then this gets into the last part about passenger briefings. So we give a passenger briefing at the beginning of the flight, and at least 2 of these incidents happened after the flight had landed. So had a passenger briefing been given about staying away from the propeller, likely anything on the passenger briefing could have been forgotten. And those briefings are generally done after you are sitting down in the airport, down in the aircraft with your passenger. So staying away from the propeller is generally not something that's on those briefings. But part of being a pilot is not only staying ahead of the aircraft, but it's also staying ahead of your passengers. So anticipating what your passengers will do, even in cases which aren't normally briefed. Of course, this is hindsight, but what could have been done in these cases, and who knows, maybe it was done, is that, while you're taxiing back to the ramp, you completely brief the passengers on exactly what to do and where to walk. So in the Diamond case, maybe something like, wait till I shut the engine down and the propeller comes to a complete stop, and then exit the aircraft. Similar to the briefing you get on the airlines, remain in your seat until the aircraft has come to a complete stop and the pilot has turned off the fasten seatbelt sign, right? So very clear instructions on what to do and when to do it. So, anticipate your passenger's next move and then, smack them if they are starting to stand up and putting themselves in a dangerous situation. And for the Cessna case where they were just leaving the aircraft, maybe they had done this, point the tail to the direction that the passengers needed to walk and clearly tell them where you need to go is behind the aircraft, open the door, exit the plane, go past the tail and keep going back to the parking lot or building or wherever they need to go. And make sure it's very clear that they don't, go towards the front of the engine. So maybe these things have been done. A propeller at night is hard to see. Propeller spinning anytime is really hard to see. So you need to be real clear with the instructions when we have passengers. Now, have I let passengers switch seats with the engine running? Yes, I have. Fortunately, those were my kids, 9 and 11, and they pretty much just climb over the seat and the door never even opened. But in another few years, we'll need to come up with a new plan. Now, of course, the safest advice is to shut the aircraft down, right? Yes, this adds time. Yes, it adds inconvenience. And if you are flying with another pilot in like a Piper Cherokee and you're just dropping them off and they're heading out back, is it dangerous to leave the engine running when they need to exit the aircraft, head towards the back of the wing and away they go? Probably not so dangerous if it's another pilot, but someone who's inexperienced could be more dangerous. But with everything regarding flying, we were talking about playing with margins. How much safety margin are you leaving yourself? Exiting the aircraft with the engine running is kind of like lining up two holes in the Swiss cheese model. You're starting to create a path towards a bad situation. I can't say never do it. If it's a competent pilot exiting, you'll probably be okay. If it's a friend you are taking with you who isn't that familiar with general aviation, you better pull the mixture. So that's all for today. Thanks everyone for riding along. We'll hope you join us on a future flight, and thanks for flying J1 Aviation.